Might have noticed today, politicians starting to put up their posters. Some have started their campaigning, but so far it seems they're concentrating on the bigger cities, the bigger places, which often get more media attention. Lorenzo Davids is the CEO of the Development Impact Fund. He's been going around parts of the Western Cape, visiting areas that many politicians, I'm afraid to say, perhaps most media don't get to. Lorenzo, good afternoon to you, and thanks for your time on Newsfeed this afternoon. What kind of places are you going to? What have you seen so far?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and to your viewers. I've been all over the place. I visited farms and back roads and gone to places like Rietbron and Willowmore in the Eastern Cape, for example. I've been to Oudtshoorn in the Western Cape. I've been to De Rust. I've been all over the place. Leeuwrivier, Kliphoogte. So I can mention about 17 different places in the last 3 weeks to talk to ordinary South Africans. And it is fascinating what they are saying.
So, I mean, what are they saying? I mean, you know, the conversation that you have, I suppose, in the media space is often about service delivery and sometimes conversations about what the elites are doing. What do people in these places talk about?
John, Stephen, they talk about the fact that nobody's listening to them. These are the most frequent phrase I heard is they want our votes, but they don't want our voices. It's an indictment on our democracy 27 years later that in these back roads and in these farms and in communities that no one visits, people are saying that they're not being heard. We have a preamble to our constitution, which is a profound document, which says that we, the people, we the South African people, we recognize the injustices we grew up with. We honor those who strove for freedom, and we respect those who are working hard to build and develop our country. That in the rural parts of this country, in the Ladysmiths and the Swellendams and the Leeuwriviers of this country, in the Suurbraaks of this world, is perhaps not as clear to those residents. It's not as visible as we want to see. And that's the thing, Stephen, is this thing that these people are invisible to our democracy. They get a T-shirt, they get a food parcel, they get a handshake, they get a photograph, but their journey towards a better life is far, far, far from any realization.
I mean, I don't know how you feel, Lorenzo, when you feel ignored. I know how I feel. I get quite frustrated. I get quite angry. I want to sort of interrupt. How do people here feel if they've been ignored? They want our votes, but they don't want our voices. It's an amazing quote. How do they feel about it?
John, Stephen, they cry. And let me say this. I had an elderly granny and her 2 children. They were hitchhiking on the N2, and I picked them up in my car, and I drove them to their home in Smithville in Barrydale, and I chatted with them. I had a conversation with them, and here's the thing. Here's this woman crying on my back seat because she has nowhere to go. She's got no hope. She's got 2 children with her, unemployed. They're looking for a way out. And Stephen, that's the big message: is that you don't exist. You're a X on a ballot paper, but as a human being, there is no sense of you achieving anything. I spoke to a woman on a farm, Stephen, and she said to me, "We've been living here for 26 years. All my children will work on this farm as laborers. They will exit school at some point because in the fruit picking season, they have to go pick fruit and not go to school." Those are the realities. And so their stories of a better life that we all speak about in South Africa is nowhere near them seeing that one day.
I mean, in a way, I mean, you want to cry over the waste of human potential. You also want to cry over the sort of complete lack of happiness, the despair that a mother must feel for the fact that her children's life chances are so limited.
Yeah, I asked the daughter, what's the hardest thing for you about poverty? And she was about 17, and she said to me, going to bed hungry and waking up, and there's still no food. That was said to me in my car as I drove with the 3 of them. I met three young people between the ages of 18 and 21 on my way to Zuar. And they said to me, they've all dropped out of school in grades 4, 5, and 7. They dropped out, the 3 of them. They have nowhere to go. They struggled in school. There was no support. And basically, their futures are now smashed. It's dashed. Stephen, there's no way for them. They're going to end up working as farm laborers. And the one gentleman, the one young man said to me, I'm going to see what I can do with my life. If I ever go back to school, I want to do better. But he says to me, I have very little hope that that's ever going to happen.
So, I mean, one of the things that's absolutely crucial to a country and to a state and to the nation that we all want is the way that people see government. I mean, how do these people see government? I mean, do they get anything from government at all? I mean, maybe 2, 3, 4 years of school and that's it.
That's it, Stephen. And yes, here's the struggle. We who live in urban areas talk about good governance as essential to a well-functioning state. But the difficulty is that good governance is not necessarily good government. And good government cares for its people. It engages its citizens. It goes down to the weakest in our society and builds a society from that level up. We don't necessarily have good government. Whilst we laud good governance and clean audits, and we laud the fact that we've done well in the last term of our governance, but the experience of people is that this is not good government. Hunger, poverty, invisibility. I was in a place called Maatjies Rivier, just outside of Oudtshoorn, and a woman said the government came to install solar power for us something like 7 or 8 years ago, and 5 years later the battery that stores the power ran out, and we can't afford a 3,100 rand battery. We can't. We farm laborers. And she says for the last 3 years we've had no electricity. Nobody comes around to check on that. So that's what I mean with good government. We went and bought her a battery because, for goodness sake, how is it that a South African must live for 3 years without the basic services which government promised them? And so we can laud good governance, and everybody says, you vote for us because we got good governance. But for goodness sake, Stephen, we struggle with being a good government.
I mean, it makes you wonder what sort of outcomes we actually want. I mean, if an audit matters more than living standards, and yet also know what happens if you don't have audit outcomes and don't make them important. I hate to sort of ask this question, but I must. Do people care about the elections then? I mean, do the elections mean anything?
I'm going to reflect on again what I heard. The old mother in my car, the grandmother in my car, said to me, "Sir, I voted in every election, and I've always voted for a different party because I hope that someone would listen to us." So my conclusion is no, they don't care anymore. They probably will go make an X, but they know it's a meaningless exercise. She says, "I voted for all the major parties," and she was very eloquent. And she said, "Nobody, I hope that somebody would listen to my cross," and nobody did.
Lorenzo, to hear you talking, I'm reminded of a conversation we had, in fact, right here, probably 3, 4 weeks ago. Professor Stephen Friedman, you may know of him, political analyst, said that our democracy works for the 30%, I think it was 30% of people who have a voice in our society. I mean, what you're saying really, I think, bolsters that analysis, that our democracy doesn't work for the majority of people. These are the majority of people. Most of them don't have a formal income. Most of them are ignored by governments. Many of them vote, many of them don't. Maybe, to use your example, they voted for a different person each time.
Yeah, it's sad to see that as I go through the country and stop and talk to people. I stopped and spoke with EPW workers in one of the towns, in a town called Willowmore, and the women all gathered. They were all EPW workers, and they said to me, "Sir, no one talks to us." She says, "You're the first one that's stopping to engage us in a conversation." She says, "No one wants to know what we know. No one wants to understand what we understand. We clean these streets every day, and there's no engagement about our futures, the world that we want to create." And that's the sad part of our democracy. That's the sad part of building this country, is that the system is essentially broken. Ordinary people don't find a safety within the system of governance. They know that they must comply. They know that they must get up and find a job and go somewhere and earn an income. But the meaning that the democracy adds to their existence is essentially nil.
Lorenzo Davids, thank you very much indeed. I do appreciate the time. It's an incredible message that you bring from these communities to us, the CEO of the